Hi, it's Paddy Hirsch at Marketplace, here to talk to you about the latest danger to our economy, Cov-lite loans. Okay, here we are. Cov-lite. So what is a Cov-lite loan? Well, this word Cov is short for covenant. All right, as everybody knows who's ever read their Bible, a covenant is a promise. So how does that fit into a loan? And why is that so important to the financial system? And why are these Cov-lite loans so dangerous? Well, before I get into that, let me just use a little analogy to explain how a covenant actually works. Here's a subway train. Here's our driver. And this subway train, if anyone's ever seen that movie, The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, they'll remember that part in it where the train kind of runs out of control, goes hurtling down the track, a massive rate of knots, and there's a real danger that the train is going to crash. Okay, it's speeding down there, but fortunately it trips something by the side of the track, or a signal or something that makes the train, the brakes engage and the train screeches to a halt. Okay, that's essentially what a covenant is. It's something that exists in a loan that can slow a company down whenever things are going wrong, if it's running out of control as far as the lenders see things. Okay, so how does that actually work in practice? Well, here let's take a borrower. All right, his name is Jim. And say Jim wants to borrow, I don't know, $1 billion. So he goes to a banker, a friend of his, and the banker says, yeah, I'm happy to lend you $1 billion, but there are going to be some conditions. Firstly, there are preconditions, like you have to be in good shape as a company. But secondly, there are ongoing conditions. And I'm going to build into this loan agreement these things called covenants. And they're going to insist that every quarter or every period that we look at you, that you satisfy a certain number of conditions or certain conditions. One of these might be, say you have to earn a certain amount of money every month, or you have to maintain a certain ratio of debt to earnings. Okay, and if your earnings fall below that level, or your debt level becomes too high, then that allows us to come and step in, okay, and do something about it. And there are a couple of things that these covenants usually allow a lender to do. Okay, the lender can sometimes step in and take the loan back because it may look at the company and say, you've triggered this covenant, and the reason you have is because you guys are hemorrhaging money. Your debt levels are going to be way too high in comparison to the amount of money you earn. This is never going to work. We want our money back. Okay? Or perhaps they want to step in and say, well, things aren't too bad, so let's just tweak things a little bit so that you go on doing what it is that we really want you to do, which is to keep paying interest on $1 billion loan, because that's a lot of interest. So the banks are really interested in keeping the loan alive rather than calling it back. But what they certainly don't want to do is to lose money, and that's why they have these covenants in place. All right, so the $1 billion goes across to Jim, all right, but there are a bunch of covenants, A, B, and C, that he has to satisfy. Of course, Jim doesn't like this at all, right? Jim doesn't like this because it allows a company or a bank, if this bank perceives that he's not doing well for whatever reason because of these covenants, it allows the bank to come in and start futzing with his company, right? Right now, he runs his own company. But if things, don't fall into a certain set of parameters, these banks can come in and start getting their hands in there, telling him to earn a certain amount, telling him this, telling him that. I mean, people who borrow money to buy a house, okay, they don't have these covenants involved in borrowing for a house. All you have to do is make your payment at the end of each month. Okay, we don't have that kind of an issue, but we're not talking about a $200,000 loan here. We're talking about billions of dollars, which is why these banks are so worried about it. Because if these covenants were stripped out, okay, say Jim wanted his revenge on the bankers and said, I don't want these covenants, say he managed to get them stripped out somehow, it means that the first warning that the bank would have that there was a problem with Jim was when he failed to pay interest at the end of the month, just like a homeowner might. Okay, that's a big problem for a bank because it may mean that the next step for Jim after failing to pay interest at the end of the month may mean bankruptcy. And that has happened before. In fact, it happened quite a lot before the financial crisis kicked in. Back then, there were a lot of covenant-lite loans issued because there was so much demand for the loans that the borrower could just come out and go, yeah, I think I'll go with that guy and her over there, and they'll lend me money without covenants. Of course, it meant that the next thing we knew was guys like him were defaulting, okay, not able to make interest payments, and the banks were suddenly out of the money. And when I say the banks, I'm not just talking about the big banks, I'm talking about the big banks, the small banks, the regional banks, I'm talking about pension funds, hedge funds. Really, I'm talking about investors like us who indirectly invest in these loans. Okay, so if the covenant-lite thing starts to come back, if we start to see borrowers going into the market able to get these covenant-lite loans, it means that we, the investors, the general investing public, okay, as well as the banks, are not as protected as we were before. These covenants are like our protections. And if these covenants are being stripped out, of these loans, it means our exposure to these heavyweight corporate loans is we're being exposed without protection. And if things do start to go wrong in the economy, as they may well, we're not out of the woods here yet, if things do start to go wrong, the first thing we're going to hear about it is when they default, maybe go bankrupt, and let me tell you, that'll leave all of us very badly needing a drink.